Greetings, BookTube friends. I am at Unionville High School, Unionville, Pennsylvania, just outside the town of Kennett Square in Chester County for the annual Unionville High School book sale. This is one of my favorite, perhaps my favorite book sale of the season. And I'm excited to see what I can find. I had a mega book haul last year. I don't think I'm going to be able to match that from the sale from a year ago. I got so many Penguin Classics last year. It was incredible. I can't hope to find that many this year, but I've got my list of Penguin Classics in a spreadsheet on my phone so I can look things up. And the parking lot here is always crowded, but I could hardly find a spot. So it's going to be a feeding frenzy in there. But this is a very well organized book sale. Hopefully I'll make it out alive, and we'll see what I can come up with. I'm not, I'm just kind of like open to whatever emerges this year. I'm not on a major mission, but I'll check back when I'm done with the sale. Happy hunting. So yeah, I'm out of the sale now. I'm pulling out of the parking lot. I had success. I filled a bag. I got 23 books. They were all paperbacks, and I got them for $3 each. I think it was $69 total, which felt a little high to me. Like maybe they raised the prices from last year, but sorry, it's a little tight here. I can't talk and drive at the same time. Just ask my wife. This is kind of pathetic that I can't multitask. But I'm trying to be a safe driver. I paid attention in my driver's ed class in high school. The Smith system of safe driving. And then they showed us the video. It was a film, actually, on real film. Highways of Agony. Anyone ever see that? They wouldn't be allowed to show that to you these days. I was just meant for shock value, show you all the people that died in horrific car accidents. I don't know, it seared me for life. And here I am. I can't drive and think at the same time, or talk. Anyway, 23 books, $69 total. It goes towards a good cause. It supports the Unionville School District. It is just probably, I think it's my favorite book sale because they run it so efficiently. And I told them that when I checked out. It's like they just got it down. They know how to do it. They give you, there's space there too. They have the books laid out on big folding tables, like multi-purpose room tables or whatever. And you can, it was very crowded today. It's always crowded, but I think this is the most crowded I've seen it. And but you still don't feel like as claustrophobic as you do at other book sales, just because of the way they set it up. And I couldn't look at everything. I was getting a little overwhelmed, but I hit the classics section really hard. Found some great stuff and some new finds. I found a few newer fiction that I'm interested in. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'll show you when I get back to the house. This is it's 35 degrees today. It's going up a little higher. It feels warm. Most of the snow has melted. I forgot what grass looked like. I forgot that grass was green. And here it is, green and sort of straw colored. But you can't always have what you want. It doesn't always stick around, because tomorrow they're calling for more snow. Something on the order of 10 to 16 inches. Just a little nor'easter to keep us honest. Fun, fun, fun. What a winter it's been. This is supposed to be a wet snow, and it might be heavy, but I think it's not going to stick around and turn to concrete like the last big snowstorm. Or, I'll get the shovel out and we'll just take our time. But yeah, I'll check back in when I get back to the house. All in all, I'm glad I came. I found some stuff, and I had my spreadsheet. This does not have all the books in my library, but it has all the Penguin Classics, so I don't think I duplicated anything. Each edition that I found, I think, is a unique edition, so that's pretty cool. But we'll find out for sure when I get back home. Hi, everybody. Well, I am back from the book haul. I got a little lost on the way home. I think I was talking on the video and driving, and I got distracted and I missed my turn, and I thought I was on the right road, but I wasn't. So I ended up in a different area, but a little disorienting at first. But once I realized the mistake, I had no problem getting home. But yeah, whatever. I guess I just wasn't paying attention. That's what happens when I drive. Anyway, tons of books to share with you here. Lots of Penguin Classics, some newer stuff, some nostalgia plays. It's going to be fun. Let me just start with this book by Marcel Proust, the complete short stories. Quality Paperback Book Club edition. I don't think that club exists anymore. Wasn't that an offshoot of the Book of the Month Club? And I sort of remember how they had these larger format page sizes. But I didn't even know this edition existed, but apparently Proust published a collection of stories in 1896 called Pleasures and Days. And that's what this is, translated by Joachim Nordgroschel. And I was thrilled to find this. And look, it's not that long. That's the only time you'll hear me say that about Proust. And someone didn't make it too far into the book, apparently. That looks like a little interesting little bookmark thing. And they only made it to page 33. I will certainly read the whole thing. And yeah, I was really excited to find that. On the Proust theme, this continues. This was the only hardcover that I got at the Unionville High School sale. Proust's Overcoat, the true story of one man's passion for all things Proust. And this is by Lorenzo Foscini. She's an Italian journalist, writer, and television news anchorwoman. So I think this is nonfiction literary detective work, and it's illustrated. It has, let me see if I can find a photo. And it's about, there's Proust in his overcoat, I assume. So it's about this guy who, by the name of Jacques Guérin, a prominent businessman, at the head of his family's successful perfume company, and he was just like a freak about Marcel Proust. And when Marcel's brother started selling off bits and pieces of Proust's possessions, his notebooks, manuscripts, and just literally his possessions, this guy ended up with the relic of Proust's overcoat. Clearly, that's a story that's going to be fun to read. So I think I'll read this one pretty soon. It's very, very short. So those are my two Proust-themed books. Also want to share lots of Penguin Classics that I got. This one is a Henry James novel, The Portrait of a Lady, a book I have read before. I think I read the Signet Classics edition. And a little sidebar story about this is I read this whole book aloud to my wife. Like when we lived in St. Louis, we had we didn't have a whole lot to do out in St. Louis. We had a very lovely apartment in the Central West End, but we didn't go out much. And there were lots of long days and nights. And like, we kind of got into this habit where I would just read aloud and she would do her hobbies, like artwork and drawing and things like that. And she would listen. And I really enjoyed reading this book aloud. You wouldn't think Henry James would read well, but he does. And this is probably one of my favorite Henry James novels. An American heiress newly arrived in Europe, Isabel Archer, does not look to a man to furnish her with her destiny. Instead, she desires with grace and courage to find it herself. Two eligible suitors approach her and are refused. She then becomes utterly captivated by the languid charms of Gilbert Osmond. To him, she represents a superior prize worth at least £70,000. Through him, she faces a tragic choice. Yeah, interesting story. And it's nice to have that in Penguin Classics edition. Maybe I'll reread it one of these days. Another book I've read, but I didn't have in Penguin Classics edition, is Jude the Obscure. One of the saddest novels I've ever read, and one of the best novels I've ever read. It's one of my favorite Thomas Hardy books, but it's pretty brutal in the Sadness Apartment. It's about Jude Foley, the stonemason, whose academic ambitions are thwarted by poverty and the indifference of the authorities at Christminster. And then he's in a relationship with Sue Bridehead, and there's lots of tragic stuff that happens. Very, very sad book, but what a novel. I am due for a reread of this. I also have a really nice hardcover edition of this book. I think it's a Heritage Press. And I'll probably read that before reading the Penguin Classics edition. And I'm sure this has an introduction. It does. And, this should be fun. Edited by C.H. Sisson. I also got some Emile Zola. And I think I got 2 books by him. Let me see. Well, yeah. The first is called The Debacle, a book I had not heard of before. And this is historical fiction. It's about the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. So I'm really looking forward to reading more Zola. I've collected a lot of Zola, but I haven't read a whole lot of him. Maybe just one book. And I want to give him a fairer shake. And this is a war I don't know a whole ton about, so I'd like to get his take on it. Also, this novel, The Earth, which is more on an agricultural theme, and it says in the back copy here that this was Zola's favorite novel, and I haven't even heard of it before. And this is translated with an introduction by Douglas Parme. And this one is translated with an introduction by Leonard Tancock. Okay, more Penguin Classics. How about Charles Darwin, Voyage of the Beagle? His Journal of Researches. Interesting, science writing, right? Darwin's on my bucket list to read. I still have not read The Origin of Species or The Descent of Man. And now here's another book I haven't read. But it's just a matter of time till I get around to him. Lovely Penguin Classics edition. Really like these with the border like that. They're nice. Here's a Jack London Penguin Classic that I don't know anything about. It's a book called Martin Eden. And this is set in San Francisco. It's the story of Martin Eden, an impoverished seaman who pursues obsessively and aggressively dreams of education and literary fame. London intended Martin Eden as an attack on individualism and a criticism of ambition. However, much of its status as a classic has been conferred by admirers of its ambitious protagonist. Is this the type of book that sort of got away from London? Like, sometimes writers, we write a book and it takes on it's a life of its own. It takes over. Maybe that's what happened here. Andrew Sinclair's wide-ranging introduction discusses the conflict between London's support of socialism and his powerful self-will. Sinclair also explores the parallels and divergences between the life of Martin Eden and that of his creator, focusing on London's mental depressions and how they affected his depiction of Eden. So this sounds like a pretty interesting book to me. I might give it a shot. Here's another Penguin classic. This is with the black covers. I call this Series 2. Series 1 would be the ones where they just had no photographs. They were just plain with tinted, they were color themed. But other than that, it's just text and then maybe like a little medallion on the front. Those are like the first series of Penguin Classics. These are the second, where in the 1960s, they switched to these all black covers. I really like these. And then they would have like cool photography or artwork. And this is the Iliad, a prose translation, translated by E.V. Ryu, who's very important in the history of Penguin Classics. I think he was the first editor of the Penguin Classics. And the very first Penguin Classic, if memory serves, was his translation of the Odyssey, which I think I have. Now I have the Iliad too, and this is one of many translations of the Iliad that I have. So that's cool. Another Penguin classic. Here's a book I've read. One day I'll reread it. It's Herman Melville's first novel, Taipei, A Peep at Polynesian Life. And this is an introduction and explanatory commentary by John Bryant. At one time, this was his most popular book. Melville was quite popular in the first 2 or 3 books when he was telling these tales of life in Polynesia, his adventures there, and then it was just downhill from there in terms of popularity. But Taipei was known as a travelogue that idealized and romanticized a mysterious South Sea island for readers in the ruthless industrial civilized world of the 19th century. But Melville's story of Tomo, the Yankee sailor who enters the flawed Pacific paradise of Nuku Hiva, is also a fast-moving adventure tale, an autobiographical account of the author's own Polynesian stay, an examination of the nature of good and evil, and a frank exploration of sensuality and exotic ritual. It is a fun read. I forget the published edition I read. It was one of these mass market classics. Like it could have been Signet or Bantam or somebody like that. But I don't have that copy anymore. So now I have a copy of Taipei once again. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's in good condition. It looks great. These early Melvilles like Taipei, Omu, Marty's already getting kind of exotic and kind of experimental, but these are very readable, good adventure stories and a lot of substantive themes. So don't shy away from early Melville just because they were popular. There was a reason that they were popular. Here's another Penguin Classics. The cover of this one just immediately jumped out to me. I knew I didn't have it because I would have remembered it. Beowulf. And this is a translation by David Wright. It's a prose translation, and one of several copies of Beowulf I now have. I have the Seamus Haney edition, which is, I think, my favorite. And then I have I think it's a Heritage Press hardcover that I haven't read yet. And then I know I have this one. There might even be one more. I can't remember. But yeah, this is one of those Series 2, all black covers with the compelling artwork. Cover shows a helmet from the Sutton Hoo treasure in the British Museum. Love it. Should we continue on with classics? Let's do a couple Oxford World classics. Here's Geoffrey Chaucer, The Canterbury Tales. This is a verse translation by David Wright, same guy who translated this book, Beowulf. And again, I already have the Canterbury Tales. I've read the Canterbury Tales, and but you can't have enough translations. So it's really hard to read Chaucer in Middle English. I've tried to read some of the books of the Canterbury Tales. Did a little bit of that in college, and but then I usually rely on the modern translations, and it'll be nice to compare this with the other ones I have. I think I have 2 or 3 other copies. There's a Penguin Classics, and then I have an old hardcover that used to be my dad's, and now I have this one too. Also in the Oxford World's Classics series, I really like the cover of this one and the content. Sayings of the Buddha. New translations with notes by Rupert Gethin from the Pali Nikayas. So collections of his sayings. That'll be a nice addition to my Buddhist library. Don't you love that cover? Very good. Also on the Asian theme, Zen Poems of China and Japan, The Crane's Bill. Translated and compiled by Lucian Sterk and Takeshi Ikamoto. I love Zen poetry. I love haiku. And it looks like whoever read this before, circled a couple. I'm assuming they were some of their favorites. Let me see if I can pick one out. Here's one by poet Chosetsu, 9th century. Light everywhere, I live in awe, avoiding thought, all appears. Yet should one of the 6 senses stir, clouds gather, delusion, satori, forget them, follow the law, all's well. Nirvana, samsara, airy flowers both. And here's the one by Ikusanchu. Date is not clear. I was born with a divine jewel, long since filmed with dust. This morning, wiped clean, it mirrors streams and mountains without end. Yeah, I just love that kind of stuff. And this will be a quick read. Probably read this one pretty soon. What else do we have? Here's a nostalgia read. I'll do a couple of these. Books that I read in school when I was a little kid. Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness and the Secret Sharer. This was a assigned reading in high school, and I had this very same edition with that cover, such vivid memories of it. I remember liking both stories. I think Heart of Darkness was a little challenging for me, but The Secret Sharer was the one that stuck with me longer. Later, I read Heart of Darkness and got a lot more out of it. But The Secret Sharer was one that really intrigued me as a high school student. I think I was in 11th grade, 10th or 11th grade. We read so much stuff back then, so much great stuff. So what is The Secret Sharer? It's a story about the terrible conflict of a young captain who was torn between his duty to his ship and his loyalty to a young officer with whom he identifies himself after the murder of a mutinous crew member. So you have this doubling effect that's very, very compelling and psychologically interesting. And then, of course, Heart of Darkness, the classic, tells of a powerful European Kurtz who reverts to awful savagery in an isolated native trading post. And if you think about film adaptations, and this is things I've talked about on the channel before, where I'm generally not a fan of film adaptations, or they fall short of the book, in almost all cases. Well, I will say that Apocalypse Now, that film rivals, Heart of Darkness, and takes it in a new direction, doesn't it? It sort of adapts it to the Vietnam War. And Marlon Brando is a great Mr. Kurtz, right? And Martin Sheen and Robert Duvall, who just passed away recently, has a great part in that film. And that's one example of a film that I think compares favorably to the book. I wonder if anyone's done The Secret Sharer as a film. Let me know in the comments. Here's another nostalgia play, and a great story with this. It's a book called The Light in the Forest by Conrad Richter. And it's a happy coincidence because just like yesterday, one or 2 days ago, I was watching a fellow booktuber, Anna, post me a book. And it's great to see Anna making videos again. I'll link to her channel in the show description. She held up a copy of this book. It had a different cover. And it immediately rang bells with me because I vividly remember reading this book in junior high school. It was probably 8th grade. The Light in the Forest by Conrad Richter, an American author. And this is a sort of a captivity narrative novel about like a white kid who is like living with the Lenni Lenape Indians. And then he's returned to his white community, but he kind of hates the white people. Like he's really got a hard time readjusting to that life. So he's sort of caught between these two worlds, the Native Americans and then the white European culture. It was so funny that I came across this today because I had just seen that. I left a comment on her video about it. And then lo and behold, here it is. Haven't read it since 8th grade. But it's short. I'll probably give it a reread. And I wish it was the original cover like that she showed on her channel. But this is still a great find. I don't think it's an especially good book, but maybe it is. I'll have to give it another chance. But I vividly remember writing this very silly paper essay about it, or it was actually more of a creative writing type assignment. I'll talk about it someday if I get around to reading this and reviewing it. Okay, here's another. They had a lot of good sort of pocketbook sized books, these mass market paperback size, and that was great to see because if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I'm wrong, or you can like fill in the blanks. I think I saw a story that said that these mass market pocketbook sized books are being phased out. And it is true when I go to stores like a Barnes and Noble or something, like the formats of these types of books they don't look the same. Some of them are real tall and skinny. Like I don't like that. I don't know what's going on with that. What's wrong with this format? Do we have to phase it out? Anyway, to me, it makes these books collectible, and it's great to see that that they had a lot of them at this particular book sale, and I bought several of them. Here's another one. It's a Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. This has become a environmental literature classic, and it's illustrated. And it doesn't look like the text is pretty large, so this is a book that probably wouldn't take me too long to read. I feel like I might read this when spring starts to roll around and I'm getting outside more. But this is a highly regarded book. Also on the environmental theme, another Penguin classic. Here's John Wesley Powell, The Exploration of the Colorado River and its Canyons. This is about the canyon lands of the desert Southwest, which I've been reading about. I read a book, I think it was last year, Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey, which was one of my favorite reads of the year. And he really knew that land so well. And he traversed some of the Colorado River Valley in that book, some of the same territory that Powell adventured through back in, I think it was the late 1860s. This is an illustrated edition too, and it's got some really interesting artwork. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see that. And the font is different from what you typically see in a Penguin Classics edition. So it almost looks like a reprint, like a facsimile or something. But this should be a fun read. They named Lake Powell after him, obviously. All right, what else do we have? Here's another book I bought more for the cover because I already have an edition of this book. And it's Carson McCullers' The Ballad of the Sad Cafe and Other Stories. Look at that cover. And do you know why I got this cover? Look at the artwork. This is the same artist that did all those Hermann Hesse Bantam paperback covers back in the 70s. Unmistakably the same style. And it's really cool. So it's really cool. I forget the name of the artist. I did a whole video about him and discovering like who actually made this art. Because the artist isn't usually credited in these editions, but he had a great style. And this is Carson McCullers is a really good writer too. It says here, when she was only 23, her first novel, The Heart as a Lonely Hunter, created a literary sensation. She is very special, one of America's superlative writers who conjures up a vision of existence as terrible as it is real, who takes us on shattering voyages into the depths of the spiritual isolation that underlies the human condition. A grotesque human triangle in a primitive southern town. A young boy learning the difficult lessons of manhood. A fateful encounter with his native land and former love. These are parts of the world of Carson McCullers, a world of the lost, the injured, the eternal strangers at life's feast. Here are brilliant revelations of love and longing, bitter heartbreak, and occasional happiness, tales that probe the very heart of our lives. Now, I have Carson McCullers. I think I have all her fiction in a Library of America edition, which I haven't read yet. But boy, how could you pass up on that cover? And sometimes it's just nice to have a slimmer volume. I do have a fondness for these old Bantam books. Here's a book, too, that I've been meaning to get around to reading. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm sure it will be well known to most of you. The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I think we only have one other Ishiguro novel, and it's not this one. I wasn't sure when I picked this up, but I double-checked, and this is unique. Like we didn't already have this. I think this is his most famous book. Let me know in the comments. It says here it's a profoundly compelling portrait of the perfect English butler and of his fading insular world in post-war England. Looking forward to giving this one a try. And here's another one I'm curious about. This one's maybe like a reach. I'm not sure I'm going to like it or not. But somewhere I came across someone was reading this book, and it got me interested. Amor Tolls. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Amor Tolls, The Lincoln Highway, a novel from the best-selling author of A Gentleman in Moscow and Rules of Civility. So this appears to be a certain kind of like a road novel where this 18-year-old kid who served time for involuntary manslaughter in like a juvenile detention camp is being released, and he wants to make a new start with his brother and head to California, but it ends up that two friends from the work farm have hidden themselves in the warden's car, and they hatch a plan to take him east to New York. Now, I'm going to assume that this has something to do with the Lincoln Highway, which stretches all across the country. And in fact, the Lincoln Highway goes through our region. We know it as Lancaster Avenue, Lancaster Pike, Route 30, all the same road, and very familiar. We're not far from it at all. And I'm just curious to see. This strikes me as it appears to be like a bestseller type book and novelist. It seems to be billed as like literary fiction, but maybe popular literary fiction. Maybe it's a good read. I don't know. We'll find out. Have you read Amor Tolls? Here's another book that was recommended to me. I think it was in a Facebook post that I made about love in the time of cholera, which I've talked about. That was one of my favorite reads from January. And they said, well, you should check this book out. And I wrote it down, put it on my watch list, and lo and behold, they had a copy. This is Happiness by Neil Williams, Man Booker Prize long-listed author of History of the Rain. This is set in Ireland on the western seaboard, and it's about a 17-year-old character, Noel Crow, standing outside his grandparents' house shortly after the rain has stopped. So I guess it's this place where it used to rain all the time, and suddenly the rains stop. And then he encounters Christy for the first time. And though he can't explain it, Noel knows right then something has changed. And this is the story of all that follows from that point on. Christy's long-lost love and why he had come to Faha, Noel's own experiences falling in and out of love, and the endlessly postponed arrival of electricity, a development that once complete would leave behind a world that had not changed for centuries. So it seems to be very much a novel about this place, this rural Ireland on the west coast, western seaboard, and also a love story, long-lost love story. Perhaps it bears some comparison to Love in the Time of Cholera, which is why the person recommended it. We'll find out. I'm curious to try it. And I guess last but not least, we'll do one more Penguin classic. And this is G.K. Chesterton, The Complete Father Brown Stories. I haven't even read one Father Brown story. I know they used to run them on TV, and I don't think I watched any of those either. But Chesterton is an author I'm aware of. I don't think I've read much of anything by him. I know Jorge Luis Borges used to sing his praises, and that carries a lot of weight with me. I have friends who like Chesterton a lot. So he's been on my radar, and I was really happy to come across this. And then looking forward to sampling some of these stories. And the back cover copy makes it sound pretty interesting. Let me read it for you. Shabby and lumbering with a face like a Norfolk dumpling, Father Brown makes for an improbable super sleuth. But his innocence is the secret of his success. Refusing the scientific method of detection, he adopts instead an approach of simple sympathy, interpreting each crime as a work of art, and each criminal as a man no worse than himself. That is pretty interesting to me. This complete edition brings together all of the Father Brown stories, including two not previously available in Penguin. In his introduction, Michael D. Hurley reads the Father Brown stories in literary but also in philosophical terms, placing them within the context of Chesterton's other writings. This edition also includes a chronology, further reading, and notes. So nice package. So yeah. Wow, that was a pretty good book haul. What do you think? And now I have to find a place to put these books, and I have to find some books to purge. But I just love that Unionville High School book sale. It is so well run, and the parking lot was just packed. And it was very crowded, but you could still move around. I didn't get claustrophobic. I didn't get agoraphobic. The line is long, but it moves quickly, very efficiently run. And they have a great selection of books. There was so much I didn't really even look at. I didn't have time to look at the DVDs. And I didn't look at the children's lit or the YA. I just took a quick look at the trade paperbacks. I didn't look at the hardcover fiction much at all. It was mainly focused on classics. And then I spent a lot of time with those pocket books too. Like, it was cool to see they had lots of tables with those. And I feel like I made out pretty well. It was great to find some things that have been on my mind. I love when that happens. And I'm looking forward to sampling some of these titles. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully you're getting out there as the library sales start to open up this season. It's pretty exciting. We're in the midst of the haul wars, aren't we? And this was my opening salvo. I don't know how many of these sales I'm going to go to this year, but I guess this was really my favorite, my current favorite. And I'm really happy I went. And now it's been a beautiful day here in Southeast Pennsylvania. The sun was out. Most of the snow has melted, but we got another storm on the way. Could be a blizzard. Some are calling it a bomb cyclone, which sounds pretty nasty. I don't know where they come up with the names for these storms. I don't know if this storm has a person name yet, but it seems like the weather forecasters are really hedging on it, and the models have not been consistent. But it looks like the forecast is converging on, like, we're probably going to get slammed. It's like your traditional nor'easter, but with real high winds and very wet snow. Hopefully we don't lose power. I'm going to make sure I charge up my phone and my laptop. But we just got the snow melted, and now we're going to get dumped on again. Could be 6 inches, 10 inches, 16 inches, maybe even more. I really don't know. I don't think they know exactly. Seems like it's going to be worse the closer to the coast that you get. So probably Delaware and New Jersey and New York and coastal Connecticut and coastal Massachusetts is going to get slammed pretty hard by this one. But yeah, winter. What are you going to say? Here we are. Well, at least I have lots of books to read. It's been fun chatting about them with you, and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.